It is estimated that 85% of perimenopausal and menopausal women experience a wide array of symptoms that impact quality of life. And this is the part that baffles me. 75% of women go untreated.
Welcome to the Spa Doctor podcast, where we uncover the secrets about women's health and hormones.
I'm your host, Dr. Trevor Cates, naturopathic doctor, best-selling author, and founder of the Spa Doctor. Every episode, we reveal the best-kept secrets for achieving glowing skin, natural beauty, a healthy body, and a balanced mind. Are you ready to live your healthiest life? Keep on listening. I'm Dr. Trevor Cates, and welcome to the Spa Doctor podcast. Today, we're talking about why it's crucial to pay attention to symptoms. They're like alarms telling us something's off. We're digging deep into the real root causes of symptoms, looking at imbalances such as cortisol, inflammation, and gut health. And I love when our guest shares how addressing root causes helped her own weight worries fade away. Plus, we're shining a light on the frustrating issue of medical gaslighting in women's healthcare and how to advocate for yourself. Our guest is OBGYN Dr. Kyrin Dunston, who, after discovering the hidden cause of midlife weight gain and fatigue in women, lost a life-changing 100 pounds and fixed her adrenal fatigue. She is fellowship trained in anti-aging, metabolic, and functional medicine and has practiced this for over a decade. Dr. Kyrin hosts the Hormone Prescription podcast and is the founder of her Hormone Club, providing women access to natural hormone therapy treatment throughout the U.S., and the Midlife Metabolism Institute, providing educational and coaching programs for women at midlife. Dr. Kyrin has been featured on CBS, NBC, Reader's Digest, The Huffington Post, TEDx, and more. So tune in and lean in, because today we're taking charge and decoding the secrets of our bodies. Kyrin, it's so great to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
So excited to be here with you.
We had so much fun talking about hormones at the Hormones, Health, and Harmony documentary series, and you were one of our star people on that docu-series. So thank you for all your information. We want to have you back to gather some of your wisdom. So my first question for you is, how much do hormones play a role in our health?
Oh my gosh. So for women, they're everything. You know, I went through my training and my OBGYN residency. I was basically taught that women are the same as men. They're just a little smaller and have a little bit less muscle mass, but we're essentially the same. And what I've learned after my residency is that nothing could be further from the truth. We are not little men. We're foundationally different because of the double X chromosomes that we have that change the way our brain develops and our entire system develops in utero. And hormones really are the foundation of how all systems in our body function. Communication is essential, and communication is what your hormones do in your body. They're part of your nervous system, believe it or not. They originate in your nervous system, which is like your mainframe computer, and that's what runs your entire body. And so the hardwired part of your nervous system are the nerves that go to different parts of your body, and the wireless part, just like the wireless internet in your house, are your hormones. And so any problem, disruption, health issue that you have, at its foundation has a communication problem as part of it. And for women, that means a hormonal problem.
Thank you so much for sharing all that. And those analogies, I love that. That really helps us get clear on how much hormones play a role. And I think it's kind of crazy how, being a gynecologist, you're supposed to be the go-to woman's health expert. How could you not have learned this in medical school?
You know, that's a great question. And I ask myself that all the time. Unfortunately, the way our medical system is established and what it's founded on is really teaching people to be technicians that use the tools of drugs and surgery to treat symptoms. That's what it is. And that's basically what we have. And so, you know, the honest reality of how we function as women doesn't necessarily fit in the mainstream medical model. And so they've kind of perverted our health to fit into that model. And, let's just forget the fact that these women are foundationally different. And basically, what are the symptoms we're dealing with? So, for instance, I have crazy, irregular, heavy periods. Okay, that's the symptom. Instead of doing diagnostics to figure out why that person has it, what are the hormonal imbalances, what degree of hormonal poverty is here, let's give a birth control pill to override the system and shut the whole system down, and then make the periods regular and not heavy. And we claim victory, success, and never paying attention to the fact that we're not fixing the reason why those periods had a problem in the first place. It's a sick care system, not a health creation system. So unfortunately, we're getting what we've invested in, but we can make different choices.
What has happened as a result of practicing this way? And do you think it's changing?
A great question. So no, I don't think it's changing. What is the result is that you have women disproportionately using the healthcare system to find answers to problems that the healthcare system doesn't have answers for. If you don't ask the right question, you'll never get the right answer. And unfortunately, we doctors are trained, and I'm not doctor bashing at all. They take intelligent, caring people and put them through this training or brainwashing, some of us have called it. And so they're really doing their best, which is what I did for all the years that I practiced regular OBGYN, and I did care, but I didn't know that I was trained into a belief system that wasn't necessarily science-based. Or let me just say, it wasn't about the whole science. It was about the picking and choosing of what do we want to pay attention to. You have women disproportionately using the healthcare system to try to find these answers. You have women missing days from work because of their heavy, painful crime scene periods, because of their gastrointestinal problems, because of their mood disturbances, anxiety, depression that are hormone related that no one's paying attention to, right? I call it the 60 plus symptoms of midlife metabolic mayhem, but you don't have to be at midlife to be experiencing this. Sometimes it's women who are teenagers or in their 20s or 30s, or they might be in their 70s or 80s. It's throughout the life cycle. And you have women believing that, number one, the doctor is the expert on my health. I am not. I don't know anything. And really, that's not true. The doctor should be your partner in educating you about the fact that you're the expert on your health. And if you think something's wrong and you're pretty sure you have a hormone problem, I promise you do. Even if your doctor right now is telling you you don't, it's just that they don't know how to ask the proper questions to get those answers. So then they tell you that that's not your problem, right? Which is medical gaslighting that's happening. And it's happening to the greatest degree to women of all ages in mainstream medicine. Hey, doc, I'm not feeling like myself. I've got depression, and you describe all your symptoms. And what do they do? Give you an antidepressant. They never talk to you about the fact that you could have a hormone imbalance or hormonal poverty contributing to your depression. Maybe we should take a look at that. Maybe we should check your hormones. In fact, they'll tell you, if you ask them, can you check my hormones? They're going to say, oh, no, there's no standard of care for that. If you do get them to check it and say, oh, I heard Dr. Kyrin talking on the Spa Doctor podcast, and you can check them, and you get them to check it, they're going to do the wrong test. They're probably going to do a blood test, and they're going to read it the wrong way. And they're going to tell you you don't have a problem. And you're going to leave there scratching your head thinking you're crazy. That's the gaslighting part. You're not crazy. I promise you, if you think you have a hormone problem, and it's contributing to your health problems, then you pretty much do. You just need to find the person who can help you with that. So that's the result. And consequently, I don't know the exact numbers, but I actually saw a beautiful paper written about the health consequences of our current model when it comes to women's health, and how billions of dollars are being wasted. Billions of dollars are being lost in lost work capacity and in decreased lifestyle and functionality, particularly women disproportionately. And unfortunately, no, it is not changing. If you think of your health like a tree, and the leaves and branches are all the different symptoms you might have, and you go down the trunk into the roots and that are in the soil, and you address the problems there, well, then all your leaves and branches improve. So you don't have to go to the gastroenterologist because you have irritable bowel or ulcerative colitis, and go to the psychiatrist because you have depression and anxiety, and go to the dermatologist because you have acne and rosacea. When you go down in the roots in the soil of the tree and you fix those problems, all those problems in the leaves and branches get better. So I think what's actually happening is that we're getting a bifurcation of our healthcare system. There are more and more doctors like me who practice this type of care outside the mainstream model. And that also means outside the mainstream payer model. And that means you pay cash for it.
It's interesting. Being a naturopathic physician, we learn all of this in medical school. It's part of our education. We're taught, a lot of the professors are naturopathic physicians. So even anatomy class or physiology classes, there's this sense of that instilled in it. And I feel for those of you who do go the conventional medicine route and have to kind of unlearn and relearn. But I'm so happy that there are doctors like you that have kind of come around and see this other way and have both perspectives, because it's important for us to understand both. I want you to share with the listeners about what got you on this journey.
A great question. So I am a board certified OBGYN, and I practiced regular obstetrics and gynecology for many, many years. And I loved it. I've delivered thousands of babies. I've helped thousands of women with their pap smears and their breast health and birth control and all the things that we do as gynecologists. And my health started suffering. So I was in my 40s, and at my worst, I weighed 243 pounds. I suffered with chronic fatigue. So all I had energy to do was basically go to work and then come home and go to sleep. Even though I was a wife and a mom of 2 kids, I didn't have energy for anything else in my life. I suffered with something called fibromyalgia, where I had pain in my body on a daily basis for years that interfered with my activities of daily living. I suffered with anxiety and depression so severe. At one point, I was on 5 psychoactive medications. I had irritable bowel with no answers as to, I didn't know if I was going to eat one day and go to the bathroom 15 times that day, or maybe not for 15 days. So it was anybody's guess. I had gastritis. My hair was falling out. I had no sex drive. I mean, I had the laundry list of what I call midlife metabolic mayhem. And as a board certified OBGYN, I say, well, I've got the top 5 symptoms of low thyroid, right? I'm tired, I'm overweight, I'm constipated at times, my hair is falling out, I have anxiety and depression. These are the symptoms of low thyroid. Let me check my thyroid. I would do a blood test. It would come back, quote unquote, normal. And then I would go to my doctor and I'd say, something's got to be wrong. Look at me. And she would run tests and she'd say, no, they're all fine. You're just lazy. You need to work out more. You just need to eat less. It's a moral failure, right? She would tell me. And I know some people listening can identify with that. And so it just kept getting worse and worse. And I call it circling the drain. Every week I would wake up and it would be some new symptom, some problem. I'm taking a fistful of medications every day. Nothing is fixing the problem. They're just kind of controlling symptoms and allowing me to function. But not one of those prescriptions I took ever restored me to my normal weight, normal energy, feeling great, vital, alive self, and had me go, oh my gosh, I feel amazing. This medication is amazing. It never happened. And I kept going back to my doctor, like, something's wrong, something's wrong. And she kept running tests. And then finally, the last time I ever saw her in her office, she said, okay, Kyrin, I'm going to run these tests one more time. She talked to me like I had been a bad child. I'm going to run these tests one more time. And if they're normal, like, I don't want to hear about it anymore. And I remember she made me drive over to her office to get the results. And it was like a Tuesday, and I drove after work, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, what if she again finds nothing wrong? What then? I was feeling so hopeless and helpless, like I couldn't fit in any of my clothes. I had no social life because I didn't want to go anywhere or do anything because nothing fit properly. And I was embarrassed by my weight. And I went in her office and she told me, she said, your labs are all fine. They're all normal. Quote unquote normal. So just stop with this, right? You just need to exercise more and eat less and take these medications, and there's nothing wrong with you. And I, held the tears in her office and ran out to my car. It had started raining, and then I just bawled, and I felt so hopeless and helpless, and thought, if this is what life is, I don't even want it, because I really didn't have much of a life at that point. And I didn't have a choice because I was the breadwinner in my family. So I kept having to put one foot in front of the other. And then it was one of my patients who I had been working with in her 40s, same thing, midlife metabolic mayhem. I gave her a fistful of prescriptions. Here's something because you can't sleep. Here's something because you don't feel like yourself, an antidepressant, right? Here's something for your gut. Here's the birth control pill for your crazy crime scene periods. And she went away, she came back, and she said, well, yeah, some of these things are a little better, but I still can't lose the weight, and I don't feel like myself, and I just don't feel right. So she went away, and then I didn't see her for a year. And then a year later, she came back for her annual exam. Many of you go for that, so you know what I'm talking about. And I saw her at the end of the hall, and I was like, oh my gosh, this change had happened. She had lost the weight she couldn't lose. Her hair was full and shiny. She was smiling. The light was on in her eyes. And I couldn't wait to get her into a room and ask her what happened. And so I did. And she told me, I went to this doctor who did these tests you never did with me, and did these treatments you never did. And it changed everything. And so, she was a walking billboard. So I started to research it, and I said, I'm going to find out everything I can about this, and I'm going to use it on myself. And if it works, I'm going to spend the rest of my life teaching other women about this. And so that's what I did. And I ended up completing a fellowship in anti-aging, metabolic, and functional medicine with the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. And I was like canceling Gretel, following the breadcrumb trail. So I went to school to learn the things you learned in naturopathy school, right? That we don't learn in medical school. And, I discovered the right way to test my hormones. And when I did the right test and I read them the right way, oh my gosh, I had low thyroid. I had low progesterone. I had low testosterone. And so then I started treating that, and actually was a naturopathic doctor I started working with initially. And then I discovered food sensitivity testing. So I did that. And then it was like someone popped a balloon. And I just started losing the weight, not because I was trying to lose weight. Weight is not a calorie in, calories out issue. It's a foundational root cause issue. So when you start addressing all those root causes, I didn't even have to think about it. The weight just started coming off. My energy started going up. And slowly but surely, more gut testing, mitochondrial testing, micronutrient testing, and addressing all the issues that I found. I got off all medications except, at this point, I'm in menopause, and to treat my hormonal poverty, choose to use bioidentical hormones. But I don't take any pharmaceuticals that are artificial to my body anymore. And everything normalized. So that's how I got on this path. And then all my patients who were women at midlife started seeing the transformation and pulling me aside. What are you doing? I want that. So I started doing it with them. And I started this journey in 2008. So around about 2010, they're pulling me aside wanting this. So I started doing it with them. And, we're not going to talk about the finances, but you can't do this in a regular medical model. It just doesn't work. And everyone told me that, but I tried it anyway because I wanted it to be affordable for everyone, but it just doesn't work. And so I ended up having to actually open a new practice to do this. So 2011, I retired entirely from OBGYN and have done this exclusively since. First in a brick and mortar office, but then I realized there's so many women who need this. I'll never reach all of them in a brick and mortar office. And I started offering online programs. And now that's all I do. I do everything virtually from anywhere in the United States for the most part. Women can access my programs and get this type of care.
Thank you for sharing your journey. There's something I want to come back to, and that is when you mentioned that the weight just dropped off, like you didn't really think about it anymore. How was that for you? Because I can imagine so many women are like, why is I just still have this weight and it won't go away?
Right. Because we're taught to think about weight as a calorie issue, like a bank account, that our weight is a bank account. Too much in, too many calories in, not enough out. I ate too much. I didn't go to the gym and work it off. And we've had that so hammered into our heads that we believe it, like we believe that the sun is going to come up every day, right? It's such a fabric of our belief system that we don't even question it. And it's just not true. Your body handles calories in and calories out differently based on your metabolic status, based on the biochemistry that's happening. And so however your body is being programmed to think about those calories in depends on your toxicity levels, depends on the communication from your hormones. Are your hormones giving the communication, hold on to every calorie that comes in here and don't let it go? Right? If they're giving that communication signal, well, guess what? You could eat the same amount of calories as someone else, and you're holding on to way more of those calories as fat than the next person. So you have to look at, your weight is a complex biochemistry equation. Yes, there's input of calories, but there's also input of what are all your hormones saying? What are different toxins in your body saying? What are other nutrients in your body saying? Are you missing nutrients that aren't getting into the conversation? So when you fix what's in the black box that is all these other things we're talking about, then your body says, oh, now I have what I know I need to have proper communication. I don't need all these extra calories. I can let them go. I don't have to hold on to them. And at the time, I wasn't even exercising because I had such severe adrenal fatigue, which some of you may recognize that term. I didn't have the energy to exercise. So I was losing weight with no exercise and eating probably the same number of calories. Blow your mind. And yes, it's possible for you. But you've got to ask the right questions and go down. If your health is a tree, you got to go down in the soil to the roots and address all those problems.
And with addressing those problems, do you find it's more complicated as we get older?
I wouldn't say that it's more complicated, but if you think about your health, it's like health is a journey. It's not a destination. The other thing that we believe, like we believe the sun's going to come up every day, is I have one problem and there's one solution out there and I just haven't found it yet. And we hang on to that, right? So we're combing Dr. Google and podcasts and blogs looking for the one thing. What's the one supplement I have to take? What's the one diet that's going to fix this for me? And really my only problem is my weight, or really my only problem is that I can't sleep. So I love to have people do this first step that I do in my Hormone Bliss Challenge. The first thing you got to do is get honest with yourself. It's never one thing. It's like ants at a picnic. It's never one ant. You see one, there's 100 somewhere, okay? And it's the same with your health problems. So you've got to get honest, because if you're not honest about all the symptoms of midlife metabolic mayhem that are plaguing you, you'll never get the results because you won't be asking the right questions that will point you in the right direction. So you've got to get honest about that and get honest about the fact that it's never one thing. So always pretty much all the inputs into your health are the same no matter your age. But the problem is that it's kind of like if you're older and now you're just starting on this journey and you haven't looked at any of these root cause problems your entire life, more things are going to have gone wrong. It's almost like if you've lived in a house for 40, 50 years and you've never gone in the basement and you've never checked the foundation, you've never checked for termites, you never checked if there was a foundation problem, you never checked behind the walls, you never checked anything going on, and now all of a sudden there's a leak there's water coming out of the ceiling. Is it going to be harder for you to figure out and fix the reason why the water's leaking? Well, maybe, maybe not, but you've got to start doing the investigation and asking the right questions. So you still got to ask the same questions. So for me, as a woman, it starts for all women with hormones. So you have to do the right hormone tests and read them the right way. If you're 10, 20, 70, 80. It doesn't matter. Now, have you had more chance if you're 70 to 80 to have those problems go off the rails? Yes. And then you've got other inputs coming, like the programmed obsolescence of menopause. So there can be more things to look at and become disturbed. But I've seen some people in their 20s who literally had hormones like they were 80 years old. So just because you're older doesn't mean that it's going to be more complicated. I've seen some older women who it actually wasn't that complicated. So that's not a good indicator. But how crappy you feel is a good indicator, right? The worse you feel, generally, the more problems you're having. Although having said that, sometimes the opposite is true. And I often say that we women who have a lot of symptoms are actually the lucky ones, because we're not going to sweep it under the carpet and go, it's not that big a deal. I'll deal with this later when I retire and have time to pay attention to my health. So, the fact that my health was like a dumpster fire in my 40s really sent me searching for answers. And it also cracked me open to the possibility that I didn't know everything. So the truth is that this type of care came across my path many years before I actually picked up the tools and said yes. There was a doctor who came to our town who offered these types of services, and we all laughed about him behind his back. We said he was a quack. He didn't know what he was talking about. And, I had something then, what I call contempt prior to investigation, which means I wasn't even really willing to investigate it. I thought I knew everything. And a lot of women who discover this say, well, why doesn't my doctor know about this? Why haven't they talked to me about this? Because they too have been told by the certifying board in the United States of America that they know more than anyone else about the topic of women's health or whatever topic is their specialty. Therefore, there's no need for them to question what they know. They're the authority. And then we get this contempt prior to investigation that I used to have. I know everything. There couldn't possibly be anything else valid to know. And it wasn't until I had so much pain and had been beaten up so much by my health that I was like, God, please tell me, what am I missing? Where am I wrong? And I would look around and I'd see some women who were, in their 40s, 60s, older, and their weight was great and they had great energy and their hair and they were having good sex. And I'm like, what do they know that I don't know, right? I would like to chalk it up to, it's their genes, and women, we love to shame those women. It's their genes, No, it's not. They know something you don't know. And really looking at the fact that we've been so conditioned by society to believe, and it's almost like we're robots. The doctor is the expert on my health. All my healthcare needs should be met by my $30 HMO copay doctor, right? If they don't have the answer, there is no answer. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Once you get outside that system, you'll be like, oh my gosh, it's like, I could have had a V8. I could have been doing this the whole time. Yes, you could, at whatever age you are. So it's never too late. It's not necessarily more complicated.
So to recap some of this, I really like how you talk about how those people that have a lot of symptoms, it actually can be a blessing. And I want to reiterate for the listeners that whatever your symptoms are, even if you have one symptom or if you have a lot of symptoms, they are signs that your body's trying to talk to you to tell you that something's out of balance. And again, as you've said, Kyrin, don't just put a Band-Aid approach on it. Don't just put a Band-Aid on it. We need to address the root causes. We need to look at that. And from my perspective, when it comes to aging, what I think is that people hit this certain tipping point, right? And that's kind of what you're saying. It doesn't matter at what age. You could be any age, and some people go their whole lives and never hit that tipping point. They just, they just go right through and live into their 90s and just, super healthy. But for most people, there is a point, and it can be a woman in her 20s. It can be a midlife woman. I find that it is more common in midlife, and maybe it's because our kids are a little bit older and we have a little bit more time to pay attention to our bodies. And that there is this tipping point where maybe there's just been too many toxins, too many viruses, mold exposure, Lyme disease, whatever it is, you hit a tipping point and your body just can't take it anymore. But then addressing it is like layers of an onion. Like we can do one at a time and not trying to just like rip everything off all at once, like rip all those layers of Band-Aids off at once, because that could hurt.
There is a tipping point. And for a lot of women, it is the fact that we have programmed obsolescence with our ovaries, where we're born with so many eggs. And that's what makes the majority of our estrogen and progesterone throughout our life cycle once we go through menarche and start having periods. And that those eggs will only last so long. And when they're all gone, we will go through menopause. And men do have an andropause, but it's much more gradual. And they still make sperm. So it's a little different, but we really do have this expiration date for our ovaries. And for a lot of women, that's the tipping point. But what a lot of women think is, oh, it's just about my sex hormones. And, I did do my TEDx talk about hormonal poverty regarding sex hormones. I call them flex hormones because they have very varied functions in the body, not just about sex, right? They're about your brain health and your cardiovascular health and your bone health and all the things. But most of us have been accruing dysfunctions that have remained under our awareness for years or decades until we hit that point. And then here comes perimenopause and menopause. And for a lot of women, it is the tipping point. And a lot of women think, oh, it's just my sex hormones. I get that fixed and I'm good. And that's where I say you've missed an opportunity if that's your mindset. And it's not your fault if that's your mindset, because that's what mainstream medicine is teaching you. But it's about so much more than that. And so, like I said, health challenges are an opportunity. I think it's in the Chinese alphabet. The symbol for crisis and opportunity is the same. So if you don't see it as a healthcare crisis and, oh, what's the one pill I have to take to fix this one problem, and you see it as an opportunity that your life is alerting you to, there are problems underlying that you need to take a look at. And I think it's super important to look at all of the problems, because if you don't and you just address the sex hormone problem, those other niggling problems are still there accruing, particularly like with Queen Cortisol, who helps to manage your immune system. And your immune system is part of the reason why you get cancer or not, right? Or you get an autoimmune disease or not. And so if you're not aware that you have a cortisol problem and that you're at increased risk for immune system dysfunction and you don't pay attention to it, well, your first sign that you had a cortisol problem might be that you get a cancer diagnosis. And so these problems are there, whether you're aware of them or not. And so part of like what I like to do is just shake women and put some cold water on your face. Wake up, right? All is not well. You think it's, oh, I just have an acne problem. It's not that big a deal, or rosacea, because I know you talk about skin. It's a big deal. Right?
Right. Yes. Yep. Pay attention. And skin issues are a really great indicator of something's out of balance, including hormones, right?
Right. And, it's funny because I work with women and then they'll slip back into that old belief system. And I think one of them said to me a while ago, we had been working together a few months, and she's like, oh, I just went to my doctor and they gave me this cream for my face for the rosacea that I have. And I'm like, no. Have you heard nothing I've said?
But skin's different, right?
So then we had to have this whole talk about, well, she's like, how are my hormones involved with my rosacea? My doctor didn't tell me that. Well, yes, it is. So then I had to educate her on how that her hormones are involved with rosacea. And, this is a big part of what I do is help you to understand it's not just about your weight and your energy. and your sex drive, right? Most of us get that. It's about so much more. Really, any medical problem you have that you're on a medication for or not on a medication for that's bothering you, any symptom, I promise you there's a part of it is partly a communication problem related to your hormone.
So can you explain what is the connection between hormones and rosacea? I think a lot of people don't know that.
Oh, okay, great. So yeah, rosacea is that butterfly facial red rash that we can get. And so where does that come from? What is that causing that? Well, most rashes are associated with inflammation, and rosacea in particular has to do with gastrointestinal inflammation. So this is one of the steps in healing hormonal poverty that you need to address. And your gastrointestinal health is directly related to your hormones. How do you ask? Great question. It relates directly to queen cortisol. So there are 7 main metabolic hormones that I like to talk with women about that are involved with having hormonal poverty or hormonal prosperity. And those are your main metabolic drivers. And those include insulin, thyroid, cortisol, DHEA, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. So you have to look at each of those. First, test, don't guess. And where are your levels? And then where are the problems with them? And then when there's a problem with one of them, what's causing that problem? So, with a root cause approach, we're kind of like 2-year-olds asking why all the time. Well, why? Well, you have rosacea because you have gut inflammation. Well, why? Well, you have gut inflammation because you've got probably some dysbiosis, abnormal bacteria in there. You may have food sensitivities, and that needs to be sorted out. But your gastrointestinal health directly impacts 2 things, which is your cortisol and your immune system. And I know some of you scratching your head and going, well, how is that, Kyrin? Your gastrointestinal tract is your biggest interface with the external environment. And you're like, what, Kyrin? I thought it was my skin. No, it's actually your gastrointestinal tract. It's inside your body, but it's not really inside your body. It's a protected tube from top to bottom that your body takes in food and puts it through this kind of conveyor belt process to break it down so that you can extract the nutrients and then excretes the waste. But it's never in contact with all your muscles and all the cells in your body. It's in this protected tube that really is not, even though it's inside your body, it's not really coming in contact with everything inside your body. So having said that, it's your biggest interface with the external environment. And your body has survival as its number one imperative. And part of that survival is your immune system that is like your body's military, right? So if you think about our country, to survive, we need military to protect our borders, our interfaces with other countries. Well, your immune system is to protect your borders and interface with the outside environment. So you have a big part of your immune system is in your skin, in your eyes, in your vagina, in your mouth, right? All these interfaces on the outside. But because your gut really is part of the outside, you're taking the outside environment and putting it into this tube. A big part, the largest part of your immune system interfaces along this tube. So when you have inflammation in your gut and why needs to be sorted out, again, test, don't guess. You need proper functional testing to figure out why you have that. And if you have rosacea, you have that. But it then is affecting your immune system negatively. And that's impacting cortisol, which is your stress hormone, that is your survival hormone. Right? Cortisol, if someone came and took all your cortisol, you would die right away. You cannot live without it. It is one of your most essential hormones. That's why I call it queen cortisol. And it's really the biggest hormone that's overlooked. Testing cortisol has been used by NASA since the inception of the space program. And it's been used in Europe since the 1950s, but it's not standard of care in the US. And then women will ask me, well, why? Because there's no drug to treat cortisol problems, really. And so it's all the things that you have to learn. I always say there are 2 prescriptions you need to get out of hormonal poverty causing midlife metabolic mayhem. One, it might be a written prescription for bioidentical hormones if you're not making those. But the other is the lifestyle. And so this is where the education and training comes in. Well, what is cortisol? What goes into programming it? How do I fix it? I have a problem. And like we talked about, mainstream medicine is about, here's a prescription, take it, come back and see me in 3 months, or here, you need this surgery. And so nobody's going to take the time to teach you about your cortisol because they're not reimbursed for that. And so you're not going to hear about it. So rosacea, you've got a gut problem that's inflammation that needs to be addressed, but you also have a cortisol problem. So it's your cortisol is your emergency survival hormone, and it is intimately involved with the function of your GI tract and your immune system. So if you have a gut problem, you've got a cortisol problem. And really, if you're a human on this planet in 2024, you have a cortisol problem because we're all under stress. We're under the emotional stress of, living with pandemics and all the wars that we're dealing with and life stress. But we also have stress just from the level of toxicity that we're encountering on a daily basis that we might not be aware of. That's another thing you need to be educated on. And so we have stressors that are affecting our cortisol. So rosacea at its core is inflammation with no break, and really any inflammatory condition you have. So a lot of people aren't aware that asthma falls under this category. They're like, I have asthma. I just have allergies, right? That doesn't have anything to do with my hormones. Yes, it does. Why? Because asthma is an inflammatory condition. So think of any inflammatory condition, ulcerative colitis, arthritis. These are all itises have inflammation at their core. So gastrointestinal inflammation is a part of what's causing that. And so if you're thinking about your health like a car you're driving, that's a foot on the accelerator of inflammation, your gut. But what's the other problem you have to have is you have no brake on that inflammation. And the brake on inflammation is cortisol. And so you have a cortisol problem by definition. So you go to the doctor, they give you an antibiotic cream or whatever, you're putting it on your face, steroid cream, and maybe it gets a little better. And I call that, well, it just pushes it down below the radar. So then you're not aware you have gastrointestinal inflammation. You're not aware you have a cortisol problem. And you go about your life thinking, oh, my doctor's great. They gave me this great cream. My rosacea's gone. No, you still have that.
Amazing. Thank you for that explanation. And I think it's really interesting that rosacea, when we first started talking about it being a hormone problem, people may have thought, oh, is it my estrogen? Is it my progesterone? Is it, but cortisol is actually the hormone that's more involved in that, plus inflammation and gut issues. And like you said, they connect back to so many of our health issues. So many of our symptoms go back to these core things and these root causes. And I love that you talk about test, don't guess. And I know we could spend a whole other episode talking about tests, functional medicine tests. So Kyrin, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing so much wisdom with us. And I love your stories, your analogies, your own personal journey. I really appreciate it. I know it's not always an easy thing to go down this path and self-discovery and then going around and coming and helping other people, but I'm guessing you find it rewarding in the end. Can you tell people how they can learn more about you?
Oh, sure. Well, we've got a wonderful gift you can download. I've mentioned hormonal poverty a few times, and you're probably wondering, what is that? And is that me? So there's a quiz that you can take to see if this could be you. And we'll have to share the link with you so you can download that. And we invite you to come join me for my Hormone Bliss Challenge, which is a 7-day deep dive online from anywhere in the world, where you can meet with me and a group of other women suffering with the symptoms of midlife metabolic mayhem and hormonal poverty. And really, I spell out the steps that you need to take to look at and actually get you started on them, the exact steps that I used and that I use with all the clients I work with. So you can really see, okay, what are the steps? Because I know some of you are confused. I've talked about a lot of different things. And given the amount of time that you have, you probably could figure this out yourself, but do you really have the time to go to medical school and do a fellowship and all these things? No. So this is like hitting the easy button to get someone to guide you on your path. So welcome you to join us. And if you sign up for the quiz, you'll be on our email list, so you'll get announcements about that. And I'm on social media at Kyrin Dunston, MD, and it's KYRINDUNSTON, MD. So happy to connect with you there as well. Oh, I forgot to say, on the Hormone Prescription Podcast, that's my favorite place to connect with people. We have new episodes every Tuesday, but thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Thank you so much again for joining us. And I hope to have you back on.
Thanks for joining me. If you found today's episode enlightening, please consider sharing it with a friend or tagging someone on social media who could benefit from these insights. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay updated on our latest episodes and behind-the-scenes content. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Spa Doctor Podcast. See you next Sunday for a new episode on your journey to living your healthiest life at any age.